G'day mates and welcome back to Pharaoh. Today we've got a little bit of a special bit of content going up. Somebody in the comments asked me if I could do a tutorial for palatial housing, and I figured, you know what, I got a couple of hours spare, I'm not doing anything else important today, so I may as well jump in and have a look at that. So I've gone ahead and set up a working city here. We got some pretty average looking farmland over here, nice couple of housing blocks that are providing the bulk of our work and all the early resources. Down here, of course, we've got some papyrus and just a few other resources scattered around, setting everything up. This is a sandbox map. If you go into the custom missions, you can find the sandbox. This map has all the generic resources you can get: barley, flax, 2 types of food. You can get every kind of raw resource, and of course there are majority of the gods to do. The only one we're missing is Set. There is no military. There are no requests, there is nothing, there are actually no win conditions to my knowledge. Yep, no win conditions at all. So I've set up a fairly basic city. It's not particularly huge, and I haven't put a huge amount of effort into leveling everybody up. I've just got them up to sort of the easy part. I could throw more entertainment down, but then they'll start demanding a hell of a lot more stuff. So we're currently in a fairly comfortable little area. I've got a little bit of unemployment. 10% is good, it's a good working amount, and I could level these guys up, and it's actually they're going to have a little bit more shortly. So I'm going to have a bit more unemployment to work with. Now, the important thing with setting up a palatial housing estate is to have all the basics in place first. So your palatial housing is going to require jewelry, pottery, beer, linen, papyrus. They're also going to require 3 types of food. I have here grain, chickpeas, and I've been importing some fish. The other alternative I could have done was to fish myself, which is a hell of a lot of coastline here, but that would require more work and setting a few things up. I just figured I've got cash pouring in like you wouldn't believe from these gold mines up here. So I just started importing a couple of things. Fish is an easy one to bring in. The other thing you're going to require, the other option I had, of course, was cattle ranches using the grain farms up here. But it was just getting a bit messy up here and I didn't bother. So the next thing is to pick a location. Ideally, you'd have a nice big open space. I realize not every map is going to have this huge area here, and you may want palatials on them. But pick an area where you can fit in a couple. It's worthwhile realizing you don't need dozens and dozens of houses when going up to palatial estates. You're going to want a couple of them, and you're going to want to look after them really quite well. So I've gone through and I've set up all of the different resources I'm going to need. I've got linen here. I've got over here, the map's a bit slow. I've got the papyrus and I've got the pottery, beer up here, and jewelry is currently over here, although I'm not stockpiling it. That's probably a silly thing on my part. Let's start stockpiling a little bit of jewelry over here so then I can bring that down. There we go, luxury goods. So that's the final thing over there, jewelry. So what we need to do now is set up an area, and we need to bring all of these resources into a central location so that the bazaar can access them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay guys, here we are all set up, one of each of the different goods set up. I've also changed this into the fish trading hub and shut down this one over here just to keep things nice and centralized. Now I've gone well and truly overkill here. I've done an individual yard for each one. You could probably combine these. For example, you could do pottery and beer, or actually some of the good ones, it really depends on the distance. There's only one getting warehouse dude for each thing, so this warehouse can send out one guy to go and get linen. So if you're draining through a lot of a particular resource, you might want to pair that with one that you're not going to use quite as much, such as linen or papyrus, or possibly with luxury goods. So what we need to do now is plan out our block. Now, I'm not particularly good at noble housing blocks in Pharaoh, because I don't tend to like them. But let's try and plan them out together. Let's see how we're going to do this. Now, each house is going to be 2 by 2. Let's say if we put this down, it'll just bugger out in the middle of nowhere. So let's plan out with some small statues. So we're going to want it to be built here somewhere. We're going to need a fair bit of space to provide everything. So let's consider how we're going to do this. Let's do a block of, say, 4. You can do up to 6, perhaps. You can do more. People can get quite creative and really place them all around. I'm going to do a simple one with 4 palatial estates. So we're going to want one house to be there. It's going to be 2, 3, 4. So that's how big that house is going to be. We're then going to want a space down here, probably even 2, to allow them to have some nice beautification here. If you're really keen, you could even put 3, like a giant statue there, but let's just do 2 for now. I reckon I can make up the difference in some other way. So we're going to have 2 spaces there, then we're going to have another palatial estate there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do them in a block formation. So we're going to have 2 more behind it, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now keep in mind, this is not the perfect design. There are a lot of better designs out there. Oops, I stuffed that one up. A lot of really good designs out there, hell of a lot better than this one, but I'm doing a nice simple one that anybody should be able to replicate once they can get the resources in. And the really difficult part of this is actually getting all these resources, building up the city, keeping it stable, and having the excess resources without allowing you guys to cross-contaminate. Now, cross-contaminate is an important thing. If I go in here, you'll see that I've turned off some of the things I don't want them to buy. It's very easy once you start throwing down the things for palatial estates to have you guys, your bazaar traders, to actually just go off automatically and start buying them. And if the, if the desirability of this area is high enough, there is a chance that some of these may start converting into the higher level things if you've provided some of the things down. For example, if I'd put a scribal school or a library in here, they could be getting papyrus, they could start getting linen, luxury goods. This place could level up and completely destroy my worker base. So it's worthwhile noting to keep everything isolated if at all possible. Again, not every city will give you that luxury. Okay, I've gone ahead, done a little bit of minor decoration and thrown down the roads with a little area for a pavilion over here. You can get quite creative with the way you do your pavilion. You can actually have a block without a pavilion in it by having the various entertainment walkers travel from, say, an area over here, travel right around the block, and then to a pavilion that's right next to it but disconnected. You can get quite creative. There's a whole range of things. I'm just going to throw this in there to keep it nice and safe. Now we're going to need some people in here soon because this pavilion is going to start collapsing. So let's start clearing out our area here and preparing. Now these houses will expand to take up the space they need. So we only need to really place a single block, single house each one. They're not going to provide workers. These are only going to be tax collecting people. So now let's start providing some of their important basic needs. First up is going to be a firehouse. Ooh, where am I going to put this one? Let's see. I don't want to put it too close to lower the land value. So we'll try to spread them out a little bit. We'll put a firehouse, an architect's post, police station. We're going to need a tax collector at some point, but I'll do that later. Let's do an apothecary. We're going to need a physician. And these should be standard things you're building up on any house. If you're playing on very easy or possibly easy, I do know that the game actually eliminates a couple of the concerns such as crime, so you won't need a police station. And I believe malaria is less of a concern, so you may not need the apothecary over here. Either way, once these people move in, these areas will start to take shape. Now I'm trying to keep these less desirable buildings near the statues to try to offset them. This may not work and I may need to move them around a little bit later, but we'll figure that out as we get to it. For the time being, I'll just keep everything looking nice and beautiful and allow people to move in. And here we go, everyone has moved in, all 4 blocks. They have a bunch of needs now that we're going to need to meet before they will level up. So let's meet them in order. Starting off, we're going to need a water supply. Let's throw that one just there. Regular wells or anything else will not cut it. You're going to need a proper water supply to level these people all the way up. Next up, level 2 is going to require food. Now you guys have done all this before. It's pretty easy. You've obviously done it to build the city up this far, but I'm going to go through step by step just so that you can see how I'm trying to plan everything and keep it all nice and tidy. Now we absolutely do not want our people to get lost down here. Obviously an architect's already down there, but he will phase out. There we go. Now, one school of thought does say to actually put this one over here, this part of the building. I've just thrown it there. It really doesn't matter too much. Wherever you put it, it's going to have an intersection that will screw up your walkers. So in the effort of keeping things nice and tidy, it's better to keep this area small, unless you're going to go for a more creative pavilion outside the block style. Okay, food is flowing through. We now have some meager shanties. Keeping in mind, what I've done here is I've turned off everything, and I'm going to gradually level it up. In designing your own block, you're not going to want to do this, but I'm going to just go through them step by step in leveling up our housing. So we have ourselves some meager shanties. We're going to need a god of some sort. It doesn't actually matter which god you choose. I'm going to pick our patron god, and we'll just throw that down anywhere in the block. Now this is quite a desirable building, so having it near the houses is not going to be a concern. Make sure to leave space because we're going to require additional gods in the future. Now that we're at the ordinary cottage level, we can start to provide some of the goods that they're going to need. Let's open up pottery here and allow the market lady to go and buy some pottery. She'll head up there to the warehouse, grab that, bring it back, and with that, we'll be able to level up to a higher level. So now that we're at Spacious Homestead, by this point you've already passed 2 levels of entertainment. You can see here the pavilion over here has already got jugglers and musical shows. I'm going to preempt that further by throwing a dance school over here. This is something that you should have all set up prior, but I can throw them down now. They will come from quite a distance away, so my guys have been walking from all the way down here, this one and this one respectively. They've been walking all the way up and going and looking after it. It's not going to be total coverage, so these will fluctuate and level up and down as time goes on, but having them nice and local will take care of that problem. So the next step is going to be beer. With that, let's turn on beer for the market lady. We'll turn that on there. Now there is a case to be made that we would require additional market ladies to supply all these goods. I've got them nice and close, so that's not going to be a concern. But feel free, if you need to throw down another bazaar. You could throw one right there. And what you could do is actually have one of them dedicated to food and having the other one buying the goods, or perhaps some mix match of the two. That is entirely up to you. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to just remove this market lady. I don't need her clogging the thing up just yet, although she may come in handy later. The other option to do is you can also level up the market building. Now, that should do... There we go. We've leveled up the market building. So now it has changed its sprite a little bit, and my understanding is that it will now send out 2 buyers and... Yep, don't worry about employees. 2 buyers and 2 supply people. You can see this guy down here hasn't quite leveled up yet, but they will, when they do the... There you go, the market lady walk past, and we're on to modest apartments. Next up will be a courthouse. So we can throw the courthouse wherever we've got space. It's a fairly large building, so you could get a little bit tricky if you were really keen and throw that just there. See how one, or it might be easier to see just here. If I put it just there, or maybe up this top bit, you can see there is the road right there. Now I could get this courthouse, and being a fairly large building, only one tile of it needs to touch. So I can actually have it mostly out of the block. I could put it right there, and that will actually remove most of that concern. I'm going to put mine, I may as well put it up there. There's nothing wrong with putting it there. And that'll keep it nice and out of the way. I don't believe it's an undesirable building, but you never know with this case. It's always good to keep as much space around these buildings as possible, because we'd like to throw down some statues later if we have any space. Okay, now that these are all leveled up, we're going to require scribal schools and libraries. Now these are fairly easy to throw down. Let's throw down a single scribal school. We're going to throw it near the front here because we'd like it to have easy access to the papyrus over here. We'll require papyrus to function. I can throw that one right there. Now the interesting thing with these is that they will require papyrus to be delivered. They don't go and get it themselves. It actually comes from this thing here. There's a delivery guy coming from this warehouse there. He drops it off and they start working. Now, also notice we've gone up to the next level. We've leveled up and they're now 2 by 2. This is a minimum size. So if you build any houses over here that were 1 by 1 and didn't have enough space to expand, they will not be able to get up to this level. Now, the problem with the delivery guy here is if you've got multiple scribal schools, if I had a couple down here, and this was the only source of papyrus connected, he would start walking all the way down and try and drop it off. And this school could actually run out of papyrus and this whole area would devolve. So it's worthwhile trying to minimize the connections and having strategically placed reserves of papyrus around. In this case, we've got loads of it. It's very close and it's only serving the one school, so that is not a concern for us. So here we move into the next sticking point, food. We require a second type of food supplied from the local bazaar. This is normally the most, for me at least, the most difficult one to provide. I get a nice big setup, I simplify it, I streamline it, I have all this food, but it's only of the one food type. Juggling 2 types of food, it's not difficult, but it is the next step up. It's a tiny little bit of effort required. So to do that, we're going to start, let's use some fish. Give our people a little bit of variety. They can have some bread, and they can have a little bit of fish. So we'll turn that on and they'll start tapping into that supply. Now when the market lady goes and gets more food, which she's done, she will now have a supply of 2 food types, and as they go around, these guys will start to level up. Now of course they haven't got a dentist, so they can't go further. So let's throw a dentist somewhere. I could probably put that one right in that little gap there. Okay, we're now up to spacious residence. Linen is going to be the next requirement. Now linen has a 2-fold requirement. We're going to cover this first one now, we'll cover a second one slightly later. For now, it's just the good that they use in their house. So if we unlock it at the bazaar, the lady will go and buy that, and we can level up to the next level. So here we've hit our first sticking point, elegant residences, and they require more desirability. They may not all require that. It looks like they... Oh yeah, you actually do require it. So you've got a problem with the firehouse being there. I've put them too close. So let's relocate this firehouse somewhere over here, just to try to minimize all the negative in this one area. So hopefully that will spread things out a little bit. And yep, we're still in a desirability problem. Now, one option, of course, and I may do this later, but one option is to place large statues around. But the problem, of course, is that statues diminish in effect over time. So if I place one over here, it may have a small effect on this building, but it won't be as strong as if it was right next to it. If it was right here, for example, it's a lot stronger than if it was over here. So these buildings here in the center, these statues are probably providing quite a lot of positive benefit, but they're not quite close enough to give the full effect. So what we can do is a bit of a stopgap measure, a temporary measure, where we can throw down some gardens, and that should provide them. Yep, that provides them now enough to level up. I'll throw a couple over here, and that will level him up. Now, the difference between statues and gardens provide a smaller amount of beauty, but they can also be expanded into. So when this moves from a 2x2 into a 3x3, it'll actually build over top of the garden, and it won't be hemmed in by the statues, which will allow it to continue to grow. And hopefully as it grows, it'll get closer to these statues in the center, which will provide it with a better source of beauty. So here we've got temples of a single god only. So we do require other gods, and this is one of the limiting factors in some missions. I believe you can only have one god on a few missions, which will prevent you from going any higher than this here. So we've already got one to Osiris. Let's choose a god who is... They're all pretty crap, but let's go for Bast. I quite like Bast. Now we can throw her anywhere we want, but we know that this firehouse is a bit of a desirability thing, and that this guy is struggling. So let's put this one over here, and maybe that will bump it up a little bit better and make it more beautiful in this area over here. We've got a fair bit of beauty up here. It's time to spread it around a little bit. Okay, moved up to fancy residence, and this is the final level before we start moving into nobles. So these guys here are actually providing workers to us. So you've seen it pop up a few times. I have a small worker shortage in the city. That's pretty much as people are beginning to age. I've set up a fairly long time ago. I set the city up quite a while back, and so people are beginning to age. That is a problem that will creep in over time, and there's different ways around that, but I'm not going to cover that in this tutorial. So we have here these guys providing workers. Once we level up beyond this, we will lose access to workers. They will become people who do not work anymore. So our unemployment problem, which has gone up another 6 while I've been talking, is going to get a whole lot worse very shortly. But we can work around that. We have enough redundancy built into the city. So what we're going to require now is a luxury good, like jewelry or ivory. Ivory, and there's a variety of others. I think ebony is another one, and there may be some more like spices. Only traded in. You can only get them from overseas or other cities. Jewelry is something that generally you can make locally, or sometimes you can import it as well. But in our case, we can make it locally, and we've got it up here as luxury goods. So let's open up the bazaar lady and tell her to start bringing in luxury goods and level these people right up. And here we go, the first level of manners, common manners. Now what we have ourselves here is a 3x3 building. You can see they've squished into the gardens a little bit, but now that they're a little bit closer, the building's bigger and it's closer to these statues in the center, the smaller gardens, which provide a smaller desirability bonus, are offset by the fact that they're closer to these large statues. So that's that garden trick I was talking about before coming into work. Then next up, they're going to require access to the other health type. So we've got physician coverage, we need mortuary coverage. Mortuaries are a little bit up in health. Mortuaries are a little bit different in that they are similar to the school and they require something. In this case, it's going to be linen. They're also reasonably undesirable. So let's try to put them, let's put that there. and a roadblock just to make sure the work doesn't go the wrong way. We'll put that there. It probably is going to affect this guy a little bit, but it's nice and close to the entrance, which is a good place to have it, and it'll get the linen much, much quicker and earlier. Now, this may be a problem later for this guy. He's starting to have a few buildings around him, but we'll see if we can manage that with some statues later. So things are starting to look good. We've got a good supply of all our goods. All the goods actually have been covered now, and we've got 2 of the 4 food types. They require now access to a library. Now, libraries are interesting that they take 500 papyrus to place down, so you will not be able to build one if you don't already have a stockpile somewhere in the city. So I can throw that down, and in this case it has drained a stockpile from here, but that was rapidly filled up. So I've got a bunch of guys just waiting to deliver. So that's throwing down the papyrus. They also require papyrus to work. So it's going to have to be dropped off from this guy over here. So you can see now having multiple housing blocks with multiple scribal schools and libraries can really be a drain for a single delivery man here. And if he's starting to go quite far along the city, he will reach his limit very, very quickly. So I met the demand, but the spacious manor didn't level up. Now what happens is they're going to require a 3rd god. So this can be either Ptah or Bast in this particular case. No, I take that back. We've already got Bast. It can be either Ptah or Ra. Let's go Ra, god of something. And now we can throw this one over here. Let's try to help mitigate some of this negative over here by throwing a temple on the other side of that firehouse. Yes, very, very happy. So that'll provide the 3rd god type and allow these guys to level up further. Okay, we're at the elegant manor now, but they require additional entertainment. The question you may be asking yourself is, how do I get more entertainment? I've already got jugglers, I've already got musical shows, and I've already got dance shows. So my pavilion is maxed out. Could I throw down a booth perhaps? Could I throw down a bandstand? No, that will not work. Even additional pavilions won't work. They need a 4th type of entertainment. Now that one, I do believe, comes from this building right here, the Senate House. Now, the Senate House is reasonably undesirable, so I could probably actually maybe even move that scribal school. I'll think about that later. That's something for an optimization run I could do a little bit later. But the Senate House is a little bit undesirable, and it should be somewhere near the beer access. That requires beer to work. Now, it's also a 4x4 building, so what I'm going to do is put that just on the edge here. There are 2 spaces here that I can fit in. 1, 2. So I'm going to put this Senate House right there, 1 space off, so it's only barely connected. That minimizes the amount of space or surface area on this block. What I can do as well to offset that now is throw down a couple of small statues. Let's just press R to rotate them as well. I like to get a couple of different varieties in there. And that will allow us, once I get beer, which they now have, to level these houses up further. And here we go, stately manors. Now, if you're playing Blxz or a couple of the earlier cities, often stately manors are one of the requirements. You don't tend to have to go all the way to palatials, so stately manors are a nice, easy goal to get to. They're also, I believe, the final 3x3 building. So let's have a look here. We need a 2nd type of luxury good like ivory. Now, this here, we've already got luxury goods. They're not going to consume more luxury goods. They're just going to require access to a 2nd type. Now you could go through the rigmarole, excuse me, of throwing down a trading only isolated stockyard over here that doesn't get resources and doesn't receive jewelry, and then actually bring in ivory or something like that. That's not necessary. What I can do here, all I need is access to it, theoretical access. They don't actually need to get it. So we go up to Blxz here, which I've had a look earlier, sells ivory. You can often find other ones down south which are not available, but Kerma will often sell ivory. And I believe sometimes some of the cities up here in some missions will sell you some luxury goods. In our case, it's going to be Blxz. Now they will sell us ivory, which is a luxury good, but it's not jewelry. So we're going to open trade with these guys via water. And we're going to go in here and where are we? We're going to import luxury goods. Now, we're importing ivory to the thing. I don't want to go through the expense of actually buying ivory because luxury goods, let's have a quick look at them. Prices. Luxury goods are very expensive to buy, 310 per unit. I don't want to have to go through it when I'm already producing it. So what I'm going to do is set this down to 0. We're going to import to maintain 0. We're not going to buy a single piece of ivory. But what we've done now is provided theoretical access to ivory. They've got their luxury good, the way the game works. They've got their luxury good requirement here, which they're getting from the Bazaar Lady in Jewelry, and the city has access to ivory. I'm not buying any in, but it has access to it, and that is enough to tick that little box so we can now move up to a higher level. Now, this is where desirability starts becoming a much bigger concern. Desirability is a problem here. Even though they've moved closer to these statues, they're still not quite enough. And of course, over here, places like the mortuary and other buildings you've got nearby are beginning to come into it. So this is where you need to start getting a little more creative. And I mean, you could just spam large statues, and that's probably what I'm going to do here to fix it, let's be honest. I'm not going to be working too hard, but it's about getting all these down and get this sorted. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time trying to get everyone happy. Okay, everyone is nice and happy now. They still haven't leveled up, but they are nice and happy, modest states. They are ready to level up if their needs are met. Now, my understanding on this one is a little bit confused. I always play on hard mode when I play this game, but I've heard stories that if you're on easy mode or very easy, they will just automatically level up. But my understanding is for at least hard, I can't speak to the other difficulties, but for at least hard, you now require a third type of food. Now, this can complicate the issue a little bit further. For example, fish here is not being properly loaded in. So a delivery man is apparently getting the goods from somewhere, but is not doing a particularly good job of that. So what I'm thinking of doing is actually, let's toggle these around a bit, make fish a larger portion of that for some reason. Hopefully then things will get sorted properly. Probably what's happening is the grain is being overloaded. So what I could probably do to fix that is, yeah, that'll be fish being the delivery good, grain and chickpeas coming from farms. They seem to be glitching and placing in a little bit too much, so there's not enough space to get the other ones there. So what'll happen is these farms now will come up and deliver it, but he'll focus his time on just getting the fish as required. Either way, let's go in and tell this bizarre lady to now buy the third type of food, which in this case is going to be chickpeas that I prepared earlier. She will go down. She still has a good stock of fish, so there's no concern there. We could have done meat, but in this case it's going to be chickpeas. She's going to grab those and allow these houses to level up. And here we go. Palatial Estates. The dwellers of this palace are the pinnacle of Egyptian society. They want for nothing. Just keeping their needs satisfied is indeed a remarkable achievement. We have ourselves lots of fish, we've got lots of chickpeas, they've got a hell of a lot of grain, they got all the different goods they require, all the services they require. I've got more than enough space left over here, so I could probably throw down a sneaky little tax collector. Let's throw him in there and start making some cash off these people. And I could probably even spend the rest of the time just beautifying the place up. I could probably relocate a few things, make them look a bit nicer. Let's get that down there. I don't particularly care too much, but make that nice and squared looking. Put a road around it if required. And build the rest of the city modular, all nice around this. I could throw another housing block in here, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4. Throw a little housing block there. And see how we go. And there we go, guys. 4 palatial estates sitting inside a nice, big, functioning city. Got a couple of housing blocks, a large temple complex over here. And that's it. If there's any other questions, drop them in the comment section down the bottom. If you do indeed enjoy this, if you find this is a helpful guide in any way, stick that thumbs up button, allow more people to go and see it. If you haven't subscribed, you do enjoy some of my city building content, smash that subscribe button and come along and follow me as I go in through currently doing Emperor. I've already finished off Pharaoh, and I may be doing some other city building content in the future, as well as whatever other games take my fancy. So take care, guys. As always, I'll see you around.